Was that? Okay, have you got the recording coming up here? Excellent. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session. So this is Industry Insights with Linn Products, and we have a fantastic guest from Linn Products, Chris O'Brien, as our guest speaker today, operations manager, who is going to tell us about Linn Products, what kind of company it is and what kind of careers they have and how you can go about your career, as well as we will hear about Chris's own story, how you ended up working for Linn Products as well. So just for a little housekeeping here, if you have any questions, you can use the chat, or there are only a few students, you can also unmute and ask questions as well. And if you're happy to show your video, that's fine. This session is going to be recorded and it will be put on YouTube for our Careers YouTube channel, so you can watch that as well. And I'm sure you can get in touch with Chris afterwards to ask questions if you need to. So welcome, Chris, and the platform is yours, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen. Yep, you got it. Okay, so yeah, very good. Okay, so I'll crack on. I've tried to cover a few different things here today. So the agenda, I'm going to talk a bit about who I am, some of the career highlights that I've seen, which has been quite an interesting career that I've had. Some of the learnings, the key learnings I've taken from my career that I think is worth sharing. Going to give a few tips, as I said earlier, about applying for jobs, some of the things as somebody who hires people, some of the things I'm looking for when people apply. And then I'm going to talk a bit about Linn, so introduce Linn Products, talk about some of the engineering roles we have here at Linn. And then I'm going to finish off looking at a few trends that are happening in the industry that I think are interesting when you're applying for jobs to think about, and some career considerations when you're making that step into your first organisation. So hopefully that kind of encompasses a few different things that might be of interest. So, as you said, my name is Chris O'Brien. I'm 47 years old, believe it or not. So I've been 30 years in the manufacturing industry, and I've enjoyed almost every minute of it. So I started out my career with as an apprentice, and the typical route back then was to do HNC, HND, which I did at Stowe College. And then I was one of very few people at the time who went on to do a degree. It was very unusual in the factory where I worked for them to actually have a degree. So times have changed quite a lot now. So I did a Bachelor of Science at Paisley University, which obviously was the former name of University of West of Scotland. And then I went on to do a Master's at Open University. I did both of those degrees part-time while working full-time, which was really interesting. So my career to date, as I mentioned, I did that craft apprenticeship, which was 3.5 years with Rolls-Royce. And then I worked with Rolls-Royce for a further 10 years after that. And this was Rolls-Royce Aero engines. And I worked in production roles, mostly in manufacturing engineering, and I also get involved in some big projects, which I'll talk a little bit about. I left Rolls-Royce and joined a German company called Rosler. And I was the aerospace manager there. So I was responsible for all aerospace projects for Rosler, working out of the UK branch. So I covered UK and Ireland then, and spent a lot of time on the road around the UK and Ireland, and going backwards and forwards to Germany and France, where we had factories. So again, another interesting time. Left that after a few years and joined a company called Logitech. And Logitech manufacture machines, mostly used in the semiconductor industry. Actually manufactured 6 miles from my house here in Old Kilpatrick. So nice and close to home, but I then spent most of my time traveling around the world representing Logitech, which was again very interesting. Moved from there to a startup company, Rainbow Technology Systems, who were developing new technology to be used in the printed circuit board industry. So big, expensive process lines, kind of £500,000 lines, being developed in Glasgow. And it was my job to set up a team to actually productionize this new technology, set up a sales and marketing team, and take the products to Asia, where most of the circuit boards obviously come from. So another extremely interesting job with a lot of travel. So after that, I decided to be a bit closer to home for a few years. So I started my own company doing some management consultancy and picked up a few projects with people like Jaguar Land Rover, teaching them operational excellence. So they were kind of short, sharp hits, a few months at a time, going in with teams and taking them through the operational excellence kind of framework that we'd built. So really, again, really interesting, really different. Left that and joined a government agency, the National Physical Laboratory, as a development manager. My role there was to kind of help NPL to reach out to manufacturing companies in Scotland. So I spent a lot of time travelling around different manufacturing facilities, helping them to understand support that could come from NPL, who are in charge of measurement for the UK, to simplify what they do. So really interesting, but during that time, the opportunity came up to join Linn Products to run operations. And I've been doing that now for the last 3 years, which has been a really interesting time because not long after I joined them, we obviously hit a global pandemic and all the chaos that's came after that with supply chains and everything else. So really, really interesting time at Linn, which we'll talk a bit more about. So quite a varied career, a lot of different industries. Some of my career highlights. So I built a factory, not personally, but as part of a very small team. Rolls-Royce put us in a room and said, you guys are going to design our next factory in Shannon. And we got a blank sheet of paper and said, right, if we were taking the old factory and ripping it up and relaying it in a new site, what would we do differently? So we got to sit there and lay out the cells, lay out the manufacturing cells. We'd done some intense courses in lean manufacturing, and we brought in some specialists from Toyota in Japan, and they worked with us. And we worked basically for a year designing the new factory. And then we oversaw the building of the factory. So at a time, I think I was 25 years old when that started. So quite a young, quite raw engineer, but really enthusiastic, put in a lot of hours. And it's one of those things that kind of was a foundation for my career because you learn so much when you go through a project like that. So really, really, really interesting. And I always have a bit of pride when I drive past the factory now to say, I had a big hand in building that. I travelled the world, as I said earlier. So through different roles I've had, I basically travelled everywhere in the globe, which has been fantastic. Not so nice for my family who've been left behind at home, but I've enjoyed every minute of all of these different places I've went. You can see most of these pictures I'm on my own, and that's pretty typical. I did spend a lot of time travelling on my own around the world, but yeah, made some amazing contacts, which I still upkeep to this day in all these different areas, which come in very handy as you move through different courses of your life. The industries I've worked in, so aero engine manufacture and overhaul, starting with Rolls-Royce, but then also going into different companies when I worked with Rosler, selling equipment and running projects in these different facilities. The same with airframe manufacture and overhaul companies. So from Airbus to Spirit Aerospace and Boeing and lots of other companies, Air France, done a lot of work for these companies. Semiconductors, worked with semiconductor companies around the world, printed circuit boards companies, Taiwan, China, South Korea, Japan, car industry, a couple of places, including Jaguar Land Rover. An oddball one, a dental manufacturing company, something completely different, but it's amazing how manufacturing is manufacturing, so it doesn't really matter. And then obviously currently I'm with Linn Products, which is consumer electronics. So quite a lot of diverse industries there. So the key learnings out of all of that I take with me, the first thing for me is it's all about people. And when I say take the good ones with you, I mean physically I have taken good people with me between different businesses. When you find a really good designer or you find a really good engineer and you go to a different company, sometimes you see a position you think they would be perfect for that, and you do take them with you. It's not always great for the company you've left behind, but sometimes it has to happen. But beyond that, I think I've taken the connections that I've made over the years and they've stayed with me for 30 years. So I still talk to people from Rolls-Royce who I haven't worked with for many, many years. If I'm looking for advice or I'm thinking about a machinery I want to buy or anything like that, I've got a network of people I can reach out to. And I would suggest to everyone that that's what you need to build as you build your career. You build that network of people that you trust and people that you can go to. and you'll do well. Belief, I've never said no to anything in my career. So anytime anything's come up, an opportunity to go and visit somewhere, or there's a problem at a factory at the other side of the country, somebody needs to go and sort it out, I've always been the one that said, yeah, I'll go and do it, because I always feel as if every time you go out and you see somewhere new and you see a different way of doing things, it adds to you, it adds to your knowledge base, and you then use that throughout your career. So I've never said no to anything. I've always taken chances, and I've changed industry because of that. I've never been scared to say, I'm an aerospace guy, what do I know about semiconductors? It's just making stuff, you know. So I've never said no to giving it a go, and it's always worked out for me. So along the same lines, I've never put my career in a box. I've never said, I want to be this type of engineer. In fact, when I left school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I only got a job with Rolls-Royce because I found an application form at school that somebody had left lying for an apprenticeship at Rolls-Royce. It was completely chance, and I filled it in and sent it off, and I got the role. So, and since then, as you can see, I've jumped around different jobs, and I've always done jobs that have interested me and excited me, and I've moved on. So yeah, some people might know exactly what they want to do for the rest of their life, but I would say that life takes you in strange directions. And often you'll end up somewhere you never thought of. Like just now, I'm in one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life, and I would never have thought of coming working at a company like Linn. You know, it would never have been on my radar. So yeah, don't put your career in a box. See where life takes you. And you should always remember that work should be fun. You spend 5 days of your 7 days a week at work. So if it's not fun, I wouldn't do it. You know, so I try to make my workplace fun. I want to enjoy the people that I work with. I want to enjoy visiting different places. I want to enjoy solving problems. So if that's not the case, then I would suggest you need to find a different job. So work should be fun. You spend too much time for it not to be. And it's all about attitude for me. So all of this, my very positive outlook on life and the chances I've taken, it's all because of attitude. You know, I can do it, I will do it, I'll make it work, I'll try something different. So if you've got that positive attitude, then you'll go far. And that comes in, I'll talk about attitude later as well. And throughout all these different industries I've been to, problems are very often the same. You know, if you can get a methodology for solving problems and improving things and finding solutions, you can apply it to dental manufacturing or aerospace or the car industry or semiconductors. Typically, you just find that solution along the way, grab the stuff that really works and take it with you, and you'll be a success in whatever industry you go into. So it's amazing how that's happened throughout my career. So stuff that I learned in Rolls-Royce all those years ago, I now apply every day at Linn Products, and it works. So, you know, you've got to grab that stuff and take it with you. So when you're applying for a job with a company that I work at, this is the kind of things I'm looking for, and this is the kind of things that I think you should be looking at. So I look for attitude over experience. So there's no such thing as a good worker with a bad attitude in my experience. So you might have 20 years experience building Linn Hi-Fis, but if your attitude's wrong, I don't want to employ you. If you've got 1 week experience, but you've got a fantastic attitude and you've got the aptitude, I'd rather hire you. Okay, so it's all about attitude for me when I'm hiring. So it's not about hiring the most experienced person, which is good news as a graduate, as you're starting out, because if you come with the right attitude, then you've got just as much chance of getting hired as somebody with experience. So what I look for is a history of learning. So you don't necessarily have to come to me with a degree in the particular job that I'm hiring for. If you can show me that you've got the aptitude to learn because you've done a good degree and you've learned other things and you've done well at school or whatever you've done, then that's what I'm looking for, because the rest of it I can help to add when you come on board at my company. So that's the way I've always hired, and it's always worked for me throughout my career. A good cover letter, it's for a lot of people, it's a dying art, putting a cover letter with your application. But this is your chance to actually stand out I might have 100 applications of people who have similar degrees and have worked at a shop at the weekend and very, very similar backgrounds. Your cover letter is a chance to actually make your application stand out. So I would always recommend to spend time putting together a cover letter that goes with your application. If you really want that job, then it's worth taking the time to do it. And part of that cover letter will show that you've researched the company. So you're not going to get that probably into your CV, but in your cover letter, you can show that you understand who Linn Products are and what we do. Because I'm looking for somebody that's done a bit of research and actually is putting a bit of heart into their application. And that heart comes across as passion, you know. So I'm looking for somebody who passionately wants the job with us. That's very important. It goes along with attitude. How much do you actually want the job? Or is it just you've applied to 20 jobs today and you can't even remember which company you've applied for? That might actually be the case, but you should make an employer think they are the one you want to work for. Relevant groundwork. So what I mean there is, if you've got very little experience working in my industry or working in manufacturing, for example, what else have you done to show that you really want to work in manufacturing? So have you joined institutes? Have you done some factory tours? Have you, if you want to join Linn Products, have you went to a hi-fi shop and listened to hi-fis? You know, what have you done to show me that you want to work for my industry? And if you can get all that down and get some of it into your cover letter and talk about it at your excuse me, talk about it at your interview, then there's much more chance that I'm going to feel the passion coming across and I'm going to be more interested in hiring you. So these are all things that you can do. There's not a lot of barriers to doing all these things. So things to know. We get lots of applications. So every time I advertise a job, I might get hundreds of applications and they all might look very similar. So what are you going to do to make yours stand out? You know, it has to stand out. There's no excuse for bad spelling and bad grammar in an application. It immediately puts you on the back foot because the person reading it says, this person has got no attention to detail. Especially because you can write your CV, you can give it to other people to check over for you. You know, there's absolutely no excuse for mistakes like that. It's the simple stuff that can get you a negative feeling with the employer. So well worth looking into that. If you give us an application that's hard to read, then guess what? We'll move quickly on from it. You know, if I've got 100 applications to read and I get to one and it's long paragraphs and the grammar's bad and there's too much stuff that's not relevant, then we'll flick through it and we'll pass on. And you might be the person that we need for the job, but because of your application, you don't get to interview. So you really need to think about how easy is my CV to read. But the number one way of getting a job, and the number one way of making sure that you get to interview, is if somebody introduces you. So, you know, there's 6 degrees of separation we talk about where you can reach MD on the planet. It's actually now probably cut to less than that with social media and everything else. So if you really want to work at company A, do you know someone? Do you know someone that knows someone? Do you know, how can you find somebody that works there that you can say, I really want to work at that company? Any chance you could put a word in for me, hand deliver my CV? Because when you walk up to somebody who's hiring and say, would you mind having a look at this CV? It's my friend's son or my friend's daughter. That application will always be looked at in more depth because someone is asked personally. It's absolutely the best way to get through the door for your interview. You've still got to go and work for the job, but you've got more chance of standing out in that 100 applications if you can find someone. And you will always find someone. You will always find someone, especially if you go through LinkedIn or whatever. Try and find a doorway to get your name in front of someone within the company. Okay, so that's, and I've hired so many people over the years who have done that, have been introduced somehow. So to concentrate a little bit on Linn for a while, so keeping it in the family, Linn are a family-owned company, started by Ivor Tiefenbrunn on the right-hand side in the photograph there, and now run by his son Gilad, who's on the left. So we were established in Glasgow in Castlemilk in 1973. So next year is 50 years for Linn, which is quite a milestone, and we're going to be doing quite a lot to celebrate that. And we now operate out of a purpose-built facility in Waterfoot in Eaglesham, where we have about 170 staff on site. It's a really interesting factory. As you can see, there's a lot of glass. We're in the middle of farmland. We're not in an industrial estate. It's really unusual. It's a fantastic place to work. And what we do there is we design, we manufacture, and we sell some of the best hi-fi equipment in the world. Full stop. You know, we make the best hi-fi equipment in the world, which is fantastic coming from a little company in Scotland. And we export that stuff all over the world. So it all started for Linn with the record player, the LP12, the Sondeck LP12, and that was in 1973. And that record player is still the #1 record player in the world. It is the reference turntable that every other turntable that's manufactured at a high end is judged against. And we still keep improving it every year, and it still comes out on top every year. So that is when you're, you know, when you've smashed your career and you're a multi-millionaire and you're going to buy your sound system, you will buy an LP12 if you want a record player, because that is the best one you can buy. Alongside the record player, we also produce speakers, amplifiers, and the backbone of our business now is the network music players. Now that's basically a streaming unit where you can stream from the internet, you can stream from a home hard drive, or you can send it Bluetooth from your phone if you want low quality music. But basically, yeah, these are the heart of the hub of your sound system in the home now is a streaming unit. So we sell a lot of those. And everything that you see on that page is designed and manufactured in our factory. So we don't buy anything in and rebadge it. It's all made at Linn. So to do that work, we have a number of engineering roles, which I'm going to concentrate on. So we have manufacturing engineering, we have mechanical and acoustic design engineers who actually work together, electrical and electronic design, software development, and productization, which isn't even a word, that's a Linn word, but I'll explain what it is. And the other things we need in the company to keep the factory running, to keep the company running, production, obviously, purchasing, logistics, facilities, project management, marketing, sales, HR, IT, and probably some others I haven't thought about. So people who actually manufacture the products make up less than half of the employees of Linn. We've got a huge R&D department, which a lot of these engineering roles fit into. And then beyond that, everything else you need to make a company work. So there are lots of different opportunities at Linn. So a little bit more on each of the engineering roles. So manufacturing engineering, the manufacturing engineers are responsible for how we make things. So the method of manufacture. So that team are responsible for programming of machine tools, planning of the jobs through the factory, the quality that we produce, the quality standards, the jigging, the tooling, the fixturing that we use, and then problem solving, improving the processes, supporting suppliers, introducing new processes, new products, and bringing in new equipment like machine tools and things like that, and getting them up and running. So it's a really, really varied role. You know, I've got a little video there running of a robot. You know, so the MEs went out and looked for a couple of robots to come in and automate one of our processes, and then it's their job to bring it in, program it, get it running, and you know, develop the different handling system that will go in that. So a really, really interesting role, which is close to my heart because that's how I started out my career. And then we have our mechanical and acoustic design teams. So they sit in our R&D department. And when we decide that we're going to bring out a new product, these are the guys who will go away and do concept designs of that product. And they might start out with 20 different concepts and bring them to us, and we'll look at them and we'll narrow it down. And then we'll eventually get to the point where they have to detail design a product in full. And that product might have hundreds of different components to it. And all of those have to be detailed designed. And then once we've decided what we're going to make, these guys will support the sourcing of the parts, and they'll support the production of the parts, the initial production, to make sure we can make them. And obviously the ongoing maintenance. So if we change things midlife in a product, then these guys get involved again. The electrical and electronic design, which we do everything in-house. So once we've decided what product we're going to make, there's obviously then the wiring that goes into that, the circuit board design. So how everything's going to operate within those circuit boards is designed in-house, all the components are going to be used. And then another speciality that we do is power supply design, which has a lot of safety implications for obvious reasons. So that's all done in-house by our engineers. And then on the software side, there's the interface software with the product itself. There's the functional software that goes around about that. So we have different things that we use, such as space optimization, where we actually adjust the output of the units within your particular room in your house, to adjust for the sake that your shape of room's different from the next person's. So that's all software that has been developed. Exact technology, which looks at how the different notes arrive at your ear in the right order at the right time. And then apps that you use on your phone or whatever to control. So all of that stuff is done by our software department. Software is actually one of our biggest departments. And in productization, these guys are responsible for how we get the programming into each product that we make and how we test it to make sure it works before it gets put in a box and sent off to a customer. So these guys develop those tests that run automatically, and every product's 100% tested functionally and electronically and electrically for electrical safety and things like that. So productization is responsible for all that. And that includes specifically speakers, where we have to tune the speakers to make sure that they're paired together correctly and they're operating correctly. So ways to join Linn, pretty straightforward really. We have apprentices. We typically run summer internships, and quite often the internships will lead to a graduate position. If we get somebody in and do a really good job as an intern, then we don't let them go. So they come back when they finish the degree. And obviously direct entry. So we will hire graduates for a full-time role if they're the right person, if they've got the right attitude, as I said earlier, and they've got the right promise, then we'll take them straight away. So last couple of slides, I know I'm running on a bit here. I just wanted to talk about where the industry is going just now. So things have changed massively in the last 2 years. Automation was always gathering pace, but it's really picked up in the last couple of years. So automation is massive now. And you can see that if you go out and try and buy a robot right now, it's really hard to get one because every company is looking at automation. Data-driven digitalization, Industry 4.0 is still huge. We're still talking about it a lot. We're adopting more and more, looking at data, using data to make decisions. And that's only going to carry on and increase. 3 years ago, we were looking at globalization. We're increasingly going global with the stuff that we buy. Now it's all about localization. We're buying more locally because supply chains are a mess, shipping's a mess. It's really hard to get things. So if we can make stuff locally, there's much more chance that we'll get it when we need it. So there's a big drive on localization. Sustainability, that might have been at the top of this list previously, but there's so many problems just now that it's dropped down the list a bit, but sustainability is obviously massive. So the drive to net zero, reduction of plastic use, all these kind of things that were really high in the agenda 2 years ago, they're coming back now. So now that we're kind of getting out of the firefighting a bit that's come with the pandemic, sustainability is going to be huge again. And that's what we're talking about at all the conferences I go to. It's all about sustainability. Rationalization, simplifying things is big just now because of supply chain issues. And self-reliance goes along with everything else I've said there. The more that we can do ourselves, the less we have to rely on supply chains, which are really difficult just now. So ways of working that are changing everywhere. Obvious ones, the blend of remote and factory attendance is now a thing. A couple of years ago, if you'd asked me, could a lot of the people at our factory work from home and be as effective, I'd have said no. And now it's just worked because it had to work with everybody working from home. So we will never go back to having all of our engineers in the factory. So the production staff need to be there, but everyone else now works very flexibly and comes and goes as they have to support the business. And it works very, very well. Cross-functional teams are huge. So all of our projects now operate with cross-functional teams. So in the past, it used to be Mechanical guys did something, passed it to the next team, and eventually production saw it 5 minutes before it was due, and realised that it's really hard to make. Now we have fantastic teams where everyone's involved right from the outset of a project, and by the time you get to actually making the parts and making the products to sell them, you've already ironed out most of the problems, and you've designed it so that it's easy to make. And that's true across manufacturing now. We're getting much better as an industry with cross-functional teams. Flexibility goes to the top with the blend. High flow of information and cloud-based collaboration. There's more information now available to everybody in an organization than there ever has been, which makes manufacturing much, much easier. And that's whether it's a small organization or a large organization. So these are all things that are happening now. And at Linn specifically, we're a great company to work for because we really care, believe it or not. So we care about work-life balance. So we don't want people to be working long hours. We want people to go home, spend time with their family, rest, and come to work the next day ready to give us a good day's work. So it's very important to us that work-life balance is good. Mental well-being goes along with that. There's a lot of people in the last 2 years who have struggled with being isolated and things. So we're doing what we can to help staff who need the help. Respect's big for us. We respect everyone. We try to drive right through the organisation how much we should respect each other. So that goes from the top of the company through the management team, through the leadership team. Flexibility. We want to be as flexible as possible to allow people to find that balance between remote working in the factory, flexible hours, everything else. And communication. One of the things you always hear is nobody tells us anything. We never find anything out in a company. So we really try to push communication. We try to share what we're trying to do as a company with everybody there. So these are key things at Linn, which for me makes it a great place to work. So the last slide I just wanted to throw up there. I started life in a large corporate at Rolls-Royce, which can be great as you start out in your journey into work. There are some positive things and some negative things. So I just wanted to highlight some of them that might be a thought for people. So the great thing is we're in a large corporate company. The structure will be there. There's therefore opportunities. There'll be, once you've been in and you've proven yourself, there will be places you can go in the company. You can take your career within one company and find a fantastic role if that's what you want to do. There will be a training department typically, so there'll be formal training opportunities. If you need to be trained in something, typically a large corporate will pay for you to be trained, and you'll get the best of training, which is fantastic to go on your CV as well. Therefore, you form a great foundation for your career. So when I look back, having Rolls-Royce on my CV opened a lot of doors as I applied for other jobs. So you can't deny that. It's really, really good. Learn safely. What I mean by that is if you're in a large department where there are other people doing the same job, then you can produce some work and it will be checked, and somebody will critique it and feed back to you and help you to make sure you don't make a big mistake, which is really good. Things against it, you may be pigeonholed. If you're in a design office, then you might only do designing. You might not see anything about any of the other stuff. In a large company, it might not even be in the same building. So you may be pigeonholed. Red tape, it might take a long time to get a decision on something. You might have to get multiple signatures, and things might just stall because you're waiting on an answer. So decisions are very slow. And you could be the best engineer in the building, but it might not be noticed by head office. So you might not be able to forge this fantastic career within a large organization because you just might be overlooked. So it doesn't matter how good you are if it's not noticed. So there's things to think about there. When you contrast that to an SME, to a small, medium organization, the good things are you have to learn quickly. When there's less people and there's less comfort round about you, then you just have to hit the ground and get on with it. You'll do a lot of different things. You'll wear a lot of different hats because there's not so many people in different departments doing other things. You'll have high levels of interaction in a small company. You'll get to know everybody in the company. You get to know every other role in the company very quickly. And you'll have the chance to make an impact. If you come in and work really hard and do a good job, everyone will see it. Okay. Against it, there's probably very few places you can go in the company in terms of career path. You know, if you're in a small organization, there might only be one level above you. And if that person doesn't retire, then you might be stuck in your job for quite a long time, and you actually have to move to another company to move on. And that goes for development as well. There might not be time or resources, cash, to allow you to go outside and get developed. Lack of infrastructure. So there might not be an HR department. There might not be, you know, any of these other departments to support you. Whereas in a large corporate, you will always have that. And you could be thrown in at the deep end on a difficult project and left to sink or swim, because there might not be people around you to help you too much. So these are, I just wanted to throw that up. There are different routes to take in your career, and you should be thinking about these things and which way you want to go. Sometimes you don't get a choice, but if you do have a choice, there are good and bad things to think about in these different routes. And that's it. So sorry to run on a little bit, we're nearly 50 minutes.
That's great. That was really clear and concise, very informative and organized presentation. Thank you so much. So what we'll do is we are going to stop the recording so students can ask questions freely, and we can carry on for another few minutes, if that's okay. Yeah.
No problem.